The Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to a slightly later edition of The Locker Room. Normally it's a Sunday at 3 o'clock, but we were watching the second semi-final from Hampden Park, which is not quite finished yet, but it is Rangers 2, Motherwell 1. I am your host, Graham Duffy, back again with another hour-long show. We're here till 6 o'clock. Delighted this afternoon to be joined by Alistair Blair. Alistair, how are you?
I'm extremely well, thank you. Apart from the football result yesterday, everything else is fine.
Good stuff. We may touch on that later. We're going to be joined by Regan Stevenson. We'll just touch on that shortly. But yeah, we'll be joined by Regan Stevenson as well. He'll be on very, very shortly. But as I say, we are here to preview the second semi-final. It's not quite finished yet. So before it does finish, we'll just touch quickly on yesterday's action. I was here yesterday alongside Alan Rist to cover the Celtic Aberdeen game. Celtic winning by 6-0. Alistair, I think when I did the show yesterday, I thought I would be coming on talking about a really, really difficult game for Celtic. I thought it was going to be a big test, but Celtic just absolutely blew Aberdeen away yesterday in that first semi-final.
Yeah, I was, for reasons of Scottish Football Supporters Association, actually at that game, rather than being at McDermott Park, much to my disgust, although as I watched the scores coming in from McDermott, it was sort of, well, that's not very good. Oh, that's all right. And then maybe it's not so good after all. So I actually sat and watched the whole thing. I suspect, Regan, were you there, Regan?
I was there.
Yeah. Could you see anything in the first half?
I'll show you a picture later on, but I wasn't able to see anything for the first 10 minutes. But apart from that, it was a great evening.
It was the worst smoke out. I know we're not here to talk about the Pyros, but I mean, it was the worst smoke I've ever seen at a game. I tell you how bad it was. We came out for the second half because I'm sorry, I was in the prawn sandwich bit, and I thought I can actually see properly. I can actually the pitch is actually green as opposed to sort of hazy blur. But Graham, you're absolutely right. I thought Aberdeen would actually give them quite a decent game. Always at the back of your mind, there's the thought though that Celtic on form can give anybody a doing, and Aberdeen had a huge support. You know, I was there with Stuart Murphy, who's the chief exec of the SFSC. He's former Dundee chairman, so neither of us had a dog in the fight. I suppose if I had any, it would be a slight leaning towards Aberdeen because I lived there for quite some time. But they just couldn't live with them. I mean, you could see the movement of this. Everybody talks about the movement of the Celtic players and the speed at which they ping the ball around. Aberdeen just couldn't cope. Once they lost the first goal, which was really poor defending, they'd already had a slight warning, and then it was just a question of how many. It really was.
Just to touch on some of the other games today that have been happening. So in the Premier League, it's finished Hibs 1, Dundee United 1 at Easter Road, and it's still currently Dundee 2, Kilmarnock 2. That game was a bit behind, so it's still not finished yet. And in the SWPL today, some big scores in that as well. Glasgow City 3, Partick Thistle 0, Aberdeen 1, Hibs 7, Spartans 1, Queen's Park 1, Rangers 10, Montrose 2, Hearts 9, Dundee United 0, and it's currently Motherwell 0, Celtic 3. The game that we are focusing on today, though, is the second semi-final at Hampden Park, which has now finished. Motherwell 1, Rangers 2. It will be a Celtic-Rangers final on the 15th of December. Before we touch on that, Regan, just to get your thoughts on yesterday's game, because obviously you were there. Celtic 6, Aberdeen 0. Like I said to Alistair and like I said to Alan on the show yesterday, I don't think anybody expected that kind of result, but Celtic were just devastating last night.
Nah, I predicted penalties on Friday, Graham, as you know. I thought Aberdeen would I thought it would be a stodgy game. I thought Aberdeen would show Celtic their quality, but no, Celtic just played really well. And I think it's because, Graham, because of the actual moments in Celtic Park when Aberdeen went and drew 2-2. I think Brendan Rodgers has said to them, right, see, when you go up this time, you do not let the foot down. You stay strong and you make sure that you score more. So I think overall, Celtic played really well, and it's just a credit to Aberdeen that they're still up there challenging at the top of the table.
Good afternoon, our regular Aberdeen fan, Paul Donaldson, who says, I know you're going to spend the show talking about the Rangers Motherwell game, but that was an abysmal performance from Aberdeen yesterday. I'm so angry at the total collapse on our defence, especially leaving ourselves so exposed at the back for the second Celtic goal when they scored one exactly the same against us 2 weeks ago. And Sandy, the Dundee United fan, who has said, how did we get a draw that game against Hibs today? Because it's Hibs. Hibs that again. Sorry, Hibs fans, if you're watching this. But yeah, so it did finish 2-1 to Rangers this afternoon. We'll get into the actual game itself, but coming to you first, Alistair, given the pressure Rangers were on, that is a massive victory, not just for Rangers, but for Philip Clement as well. They had to win that today.
Yes, they did. And at the risk of upsetting any Rangers fan watching, basically that was a game to see who gets thrashed by Celtic in the final, I suspect. But yeah, they absolutely had to, because I think if they'd lost, you heard the Rangers fans' reaction at half-time. That was as aggressive booing as I've heard for a very, very long time. And trust me, I've heard quite a lot of booing at McDermott Park the last couple of seasons. But if Motherwell had held out and it got on, listen, who knows? But the reality is Rangers got over the line. I don't know many people who actually think Rangers are a particularly great team just now, and they're obviously not. And that's why I was saying, I think no matter who won this, it's going to take some serious miracle almost really for them to win against Celtic. If Celtic play anything like they played yesterday, no team in Scotland is going to stand up to them. So congratulations to Rangers, because they did it. And yeah, without that, I think we'll be talking about would Derek McInnes be going into Rangers in the next week or so. But we're not yet. That may come, but not yet.
Yeah, Regan, we'll get into the bits during the game in a minute, but at half-time in that game today, as kind of Alistair said there was a lot of pressure on Clement. They had to come back and win the game. They have done it. That felt, like I said earlier, that felt like a big, big win for Rangers, but Alistair's right. Whoever won that game today is playing against a very, very good Celtic side. I don't really fancy Rangers' chances in the final.
No, I don't either. Like, even when I've just watched that game, I don't think Rangers are a really good watch either. They're pretty boring to watch. So I think overall, if Celtic show the quality, then I think there will be 1-1 in the final, Graham.
Yeah, I can't disagree. So the teams lined up this afternoon like this. Rangers had Butland in goal. Then it was Tavernier, Suter, Balogun and Jefty. Barron, Raskin, Cherney, Lawrence, Bajrami and Dessers. On the bench for Rangers, it was the sub-goalkeeper Kelly, Proper, Diamande, Dowell, Sterling, Casemiro, Egamani, Hadji and Danilo. And for Motherwell, it was Oxborough in goal, then Gordon, Bammer, Casey, Miller, Caleta, Wilson, Seddon, Halliday, Stamatopoulos and Mazwanisi. I'm glad I pronounced that right, because I thought I was going to butcher that. On the bench from Motherwell, it was the sub-goalkeeper Hege, then Zrakovsky, Sparrow, Robinson, Blaney, Ibai, Watt, Tavares, and Kut Romubis. I probably pronounced that wrong, but never mind. So anyway, going into the early stages of the game, and yet again, Alistair, a bit like last night, and I know that you kind of did a bit on this as well, the Pyros delayed the game. Yesterday was about 50-minute delay. Today wasn't quite as bad. But somebody actually asked me earlier on, how are folk getting Pyros into the ground in the first place?
Listen, I have no idea. As I said, I was in the prawn sandwich room with the bigwigs from the football authorities. And incidentally, as a byproduct, I met Neil Doncaster, and he is a very nice man. I was really quite taken by him, but that's maybe for another occasion. I don't know. I mean, I take it you've seen the story recently from abroad about the guy getting his hand blown off by one. Mm-hmm. And you look at this, and you'll appreciate this. You look at all the flags at that Celtic end where the Pyros are. It just needs one of those things to get ignited, and all of a sudden we've probably got a tragedy on our hands, So I really do not know. You look at the situation in Europe where both Celtic and Rangers have been fined, and I think if Celtic fans do it again, then you're looking at games behind closed doors, that kind of thing. And I think that's the only way you're going to actually... It's all very well talking about carrots and all that kind of stuff. Unless you say, right, we're going to put a stop to this, we're going to fine you 10 grand every time you do it, or whatever else, or you're going to be banned for life, it's not going to stop.
Regan, what's your thoughts on the Pyros, Regan?
My thought says that you need to ban the people that are doing it. You also need to do consequences that if the section that are doing it, you make sure they get out of the stadium. I'm all for the Green Brigade, the Union Bears, or whatever it is, but there needs to be a bit of responsibility as well. And like Alice was saying there, it's okay saying we can fine Rangers 20 grand and fine Celtic 30 grand, but that's okay for these clubs because they can spend the money. We actually need to see proper sanctioning of Celtic and of Rangers if they're going to continue to do it, because I was right in beside it yesterday and it's not a great thing. And right next to the pyro with the Celtic supporters, there was a person who had his boy on his shoulders. I mean, can you imagine if something happened to him? You know, like I just don't understand it. But I don't understand how you can sell people for bottles or for bits of chocolate, but you're not able to sell people for pyrotechnics. I mean, it's just crazy, Graham. Showing that there needs to be a stricter protocol to get into the stadium.
Good evening. Who has
Can
to
I
be stumbled
suggest-
says, I wasn't following. What was the score? It finished 2-1 to Rangers, so it's a Celtic Rangers final. And Paul Donaldson actually makes a comment here. There was zero searching in the way into the ground. I had a battery pack for my phone in my pocket that I normally get checked for at most away grounds, but not at Hampden yesterday.
Do you think this is a time to bring in strict liability then? Because that's something which obviously the football authorities are resisting.
Possibly. Whether it'll happen, I don't know, but possibly. Because it's
Yeah, I don't think
it's happening quite a lot these days.
Yeah, I think it's very hard because you could get somebody just going deliberately doing it. But as with the guy getting his hand blown off, I don't know if any of you have actually seen the picture of somebody's hand that's been blown to bits. I have.
Oh,
It's not very nice. It's basically bits of chunks of flesh. So what are we going to do about it? I genuinely do not know. There's a working party at Holyrood, I know, because we're part of it, the SFSA. My view is that they think that we could do a social media campaign and say, don't do it, chaps, please. And they think that's going to make a big difference. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference. I'm afraid, as Regan says, the only way to do it is actually either substantial fines or close the thing. So, we've got a situation with the Fair City Unity at Perth. They want to have a standing area. The owner's quite keen on that. Dead easy. Okay, let's have a standing area. But the moment you light a pyro, we close it. And you get distributed around it. And that, I think, would stop people doing it. Now, it's easy with a smaller club, much harder with the Union Bears or the Green Brigade because there's so many of them. But if you're asthmatic and you're in a wheelchair, it must be horrendous. Because it really was bad yesterday. I mean, it was the worst I've seen for ages. And you genuinely couldn't really see properly for first 10 minutes, even after they'd actually started the game.
There has been a goal at Dens Park, the 95th minute. Dundee 3, Kilmarnock 2. Dundee have come back from 2 goals down. The lead by 3 goals to 2 against Kilmarnock.
Unbelievable.
Could be a huge result. These two have had a few classic games recently, so a big result there. So just when the game eventually did start, I thought Rangers started quite well. They had a shot earlier on after 4 minutes from Cherny that was saved by Oxborough. And then 11 minutes, Reagan. We talk about this guy a lot on the show. We talk about Cyril Dessers. He's put clean through, but he puts it past the post. Now, we've had Andy, the Rangers fan, on the show before, and Dessers, I know he does eventually score late on in the game, but Dessers does a lot of good things, but in these kind of games, I don't think anyone actually thought when he was clean through he was going to score. He just didn't look confident.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's really for me, Graham, why Rangers would win the title, because he's no okay, he can score goals, but the amount of chances that Rangers score, that can have totally changed the game. And as we'll get on to, Rangers go behind, but he should be scoring that. And it's okay saying, well, Rangers get loads of chances during a game, but I think it's also very important to mention, I don't really trust them that if Rangers were to go in to say a big match against Celtic or a big match in Europe where they had to win, do I trust them as my number 9? No, I do not. And I think that goes back to where, like I said to you the other day, Graham, I think if Rangers had any money, and then they should, or they would have went for Laurie January, because now Hearts are going to get him for zero now because his contract is going to go down in January. So
the last kick of the ball, Dundee have won the game. That was the last kick of the ball. So Dundee 3, Kilmarnock 2. It was Larkerst that scored the last minute goal. So that's a big result for Dundee. But just in terms of Dessers, Alistair, I mean, he is somebody that is talked about a lot. He's a bit of an enigma. He does a lot of good stuff. He does score goals like he did show later on. But it's just sometimes that finishing touch, he just seems to lack that killer instinct, especially in big games like Celtic. And today, like I said, when he's clean through, I don't even think he looked confident he was going to score.
No, and going back to what you said before, I mean, Rangers actually were really in control in that first part. It was a real sucker punch when Motherwell got the goal. But you're right, he's an enigma. He's not only McCoist. I mean, McCoist missed a lot of chances as well, but he also scored an awful lot more than Dessers does. And I think it's a reflection of where Rangers are and the kind of players they've got. They've got enough players, by and large, to get over the line in this kind of game. Although I don't think many of us would be surprised if Motherwell had possibly managed to eke out a result here. But probably, in your heart of hearts, you kind of thought, well, Rangers will come away and they'll get the win, which is what they did. But they've got problems in all sorts of positions. The lack of money, which Regan just referred to, is obviously an issue, and that's not going to change anytime soon. You've got record turnover, record loss. So where are they going to go with this? And they've obviously got issues above that in terms of the management of the club. Again, we're not privy to those, but from what you can pick up, there does seem to be an issue there. Would they actually been able to come to a decision as to who would actually fire the manager if they lost today? I'm sure they would have, but it does appear to be all over the place just now at Rangers.
Well, in 20 minutes, Jeffy fires over the bar, a decent opportunity, but he puts it over the bar. And then 24th minute, Motherwell hadn't really done a lot up until that point, but 24 minutes, Steve Seddon puts a really good ball in the box. Andy Halliday meets it at the back post and fires it in the net. Reagan, at that point, it was against under play because Rangers had started very well. It's a really good finish from Andy Halliday. But what is Jeffy doing at the back post? He just turns away.
It reminds me of Borna Barisic there. He's just sitting watching it. He's not even looking where the ball is. Like you said, it's a great ball and a great finish by Andy Halliday as well.
I mean, Alistair, I'm not the celebration police, but Halliday doesn't celebrate because it's against his old team. I get really frustrated by that. It's a semi-final. I know it's against Rangers, the team that he supports, but it's a semi-final. I think that's a bit disrespectful to your own team to not celebrate a goal like that.
He almost appeared to be apologising.
He was.
I mean, it was bizarre. I mean,
he definitely was apologising now because he put his two hands up and then.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I get it. Sometimes you see players who, maybe they've had a really long association with a club, right, and then they don't actually celebrate, but you don't actually go and say, "Oh, I'm really, really sorry," because clearly you're wanting to get, and it doesn't do. The Motherwell fans will have been ecstatic that he scored, but because they've lost tomorrow, there'll be some of them going, on social media or talking to the pub, does this guy actually want us to win? Because that's what fans are like, and yeah, you should celebrate a goal, even if it's against your boyhood heroes. You look at players who are committed to a team. Say, take Alan Preston with Hearts, right? Now, at one time he was linked with Hibs when he was at Saints, and I remember saying to him, "When you've gone," he went, "Of course I would if I got more money." Alec MacDonald, famous Rangers player, right, was tapped up by Jock Stein when he was walking across George Square in Glasgow. Stein drove past in the car, stopped the car, got him to get in, chat to him about how he was getting on at St Johnstone. Would you like to come to Celtic? And he told me at that time that he would have gone. So, I don't think it really matters. You go, these are the guys who are paying your wages. And these are the fans you're actually supporting. You've got to celebrate a goal. You might possibly be a little bit more restrained and fans might appreciate that, but you've got to celebrate a goal, surely.
Well, especially Reagan in a semi-final. You're at hand in a semi-final. I just don't get that mentality.
I was just thinking right away because I'll give you a great example over it. Like this season, you get is it Ronan Hale? He was over the moon to score. There's so many players over the years that have been so glad to score, but I just don't understand that when when he's like put the team 1-0 up, he should be going over to the fans and celebrating, but he went over to the Rangers fans and put his hands up. So I just don't understand it. And Alistair was saying, like, look, I mean, all you need to do is look at the Greg Taylor, the Celtic, McGregor as well. McGregor was brought up a Rangers supporter, and now he's doing great things at Celtic. So I just don't understand this mentality that, oh, you know, I should apologise. It's like I did feel a bit sorry for the Motherwell fans right away.
Couple of names. A couple of names that occurred to me. Kenny Dalglish, Rangers fan, Celtic legend. And getting a bit more controversial, the two words Morris Johnson come to mind.
Davy Provan.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's loads of them. There's loads.
Yeah. I remember.
Paul Lambert.
I remember Hearts signed Darren Jackson, and he was a guy you love to hate as a Hearts fan because he played for Hibs. He was a really good Hibs player as well. But we signed Darren Jackson for Hibs. He scored for Hearts at Easter Road, and he took his top off and swung it around, and I was like, "That's what I want to see. That's exactly the kind of passion I want to see." Then you've got Andy Halliday in a semi-final apologising. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm not the celebration police, but I just find that a bit bizarre, to be honest, not to celebrate a semi-final. But at that point, 24 minutes on the clock, Rangers 1-0 down. There was a lot of pressure on Alistair. And really, for the rest of the first half, Rangers huffed and puffed, didn't really create a lot. And you can sense the Rangers fans were getting very agitated at that point.
They were, and Tavernier was getting it in the neck. And it's amazing how he's gone from, I mean, you can't knock the guy's record at Rangers. It's absolutely brilliant. He scored barrel loads of goals, really important ones, not just the penalties, but the free kicks and stuff. And obviously his career's on the downward slope a bit now, but they are slowly turning on him, I think. And the booing at halftime said it all, and we've talked about that before, but you're right, huffed and puffed is exactly the way to describe it. You were talking about Dessers before, not really thinking he was going to score, and there was almost this feeling of, you know, well, first of all, for the neutral, will Motherwell get to half-time? And if they do, that will give them a chance, which they obviously did. And then will Rangers be able to turn it around the second half, which is, I'm sure we're going to talk about. You know, they did, and they came out of the blocks and, scored fairly quickly. So, but that period after Motherwell scored, you can almost sort of sense the air escaping from the balloon, and just this, hang on a sec, we might lose this. And you can see it not just in that game today, but you can see it in other games. You can see it in the Aberdeen players yesterday. Sorry, I'm conscious Paul's been putting comments up about how appalling Aberdeen were yesterday, but you could see the confidence drain from them and the way they were actually even getting caught in possession and giving away goals. And okay, Rangers weren't as bad as that, obviously, but that's a problem for all teams. Confidence is such a fragile butterfly.
Yeah, Connor Barron does have a chance just after the goal. He's pushed wide by the goalkeeper. And then there's a change for Rangers on 35 minutes. Tom Lawrence goes off to be replaced by Diamande. Do you think that was what do you think about Tom Lawrence, Reagan? Because I think at times he looks okay. He's got a decent shot on him. I just don't think he offers enough going forward.
Yeah, he's not a Rangers player. He's great one game and then he's great. And then he's not good for 3 or 4. Rangers need players that can do it week in, week out, and that's for me why they'll be struggling to win the title again this season, because Tom Lawrence is a good player. He's had a good spell down in England with the Derby under Wayne Rooney and stuff like that, Graham. But I don't think he's at the level of Rangers.
I thought Motherwell were defending quite well for most of the game, Alistair. I mean, yes, the goalkeeper had to make a few decent saves. There was a chance not long before half-time. Diamande has a shot saved and Dessers puts it wide. But Motherwell were quite comfortable defensively.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you talked about Diamande, and I always think he's the kind of guy who's liable to come up with a shot from the edge of the box, which, goes in. And you saw that in the instant you just described. But Yes, generally they were, and their defence has been pretty solid. I'm not sure what their number of goals conceded are without checking it, but they'll be better than ours. I know that because that's not hard. But they are, and Liam Gordon's obviously going there. And I know Stephen, who appears on the show from time to time, we exchanged messages when Liam Gordon went to Motherwell. He said, "What do you like?" And I said, "He's very, very solid. He's occasionally a bomb scare. He'll occasionally get sent off, but actually, I think he's probably playing better for Motherwell than he did for Saints latterly, though that may be down to the influence of his former manager."
Reagan, Steve Clark was in attendance today, no doubt looking at Lennon Miller. I thought Lennon Miller was quite deep today. What do you make of his performance from Motherwell today? Didn't really manage to get on the ball a lot.
No, he didn't manage to really impose himself in the game much. Graham, I was quite disappointed in Motherwell. Obviously, they defended really well, but they didn't really impose themselves in the match. And I think that's why I thought like that Rangers would get a breakthrough eventually, because Motherwell didn't really offer much going forward, and it was a bit of a shame because I do think that's a guy that should be in the Scotland squad very soon, Graham.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It felt a strange one to me, Alistair. Now, it did work for most of the game, but Lennon Miller's a creative midfielder, and he wasn't really allowed to get forward. Now, whether that was because Rangers were making him force back the way, I just, when you've got the Scotland manager watching you, I didn't think Miller was great today, but then maybe that's not all on him.
No, it probably isn't, and it's a semi-final, and I'm pretty sure that must be the first time he's played at that level. So from that point of view, there's obviously pressure on him. Sorry, Ron?
I'm sure it's the first time he's ever played at the National Stadium as well.
Yeah, no, and I think all those things. Would you know the manager, the national manager's there? I don't know, quite possibly, but all those things combined. Listen, the result today doesn't make him a bad player. As Regan said, he's a good player who we should certainly be looking at trying to get into the squad, because we've seen one or two of the younger guys like Doak and people coming through, and you'd kind of like to see them getting a game, maybe run out in some friendlies, because if you don't play them, you're never going to find out.
Robbie Collins is on the chat. He says, "Hello guys, was good to see you last week, Alistair. Didn't get to watch the game today, but what a game for Celtic yesterday. It certainly was indeed. Hope you're well, Robbie. I know you're on holiday. Hopefully having a good time, mate." I mean, there was a chance just before half-time as well, a header by Suter, which was easily held by Oxborough. But as you've kind of mentioned earlier, Alistair, half-time whistle goes, there is a chorus of boos at half-time. And at that point, now there was a big second half to come, but at that point, you couldn't really see Rangers getting a breakthrough.
No, as Regan sort of alluded to earlier on, you kind of, most Scottish football fans, I would think that if it was Rangers or Celtic in that kind of circumstance, you get, if you're the opposition, if you're Motherwell or Hearts or whoever else, you get one shot at it. And if you don't take it, the old days when it went to replays, that was it. You were never going to win the replay. And I think if Motherwell, all what ifs, isn't it? If Motherwell actually had hung on for 20 minutes, that booing you talked about would have just got worse. And then the pressure piles on the Rangers players, and you wonder if Motherwell could catch them on the break. You look at the match stats, I think Rangers had heading for 70%, well over 60% of it anyway. I think it was maybe about 39% for Motherwell. So that tells you obviously how the game went. But stats, lies, statistics all come to mind. What matters is the score. And Rangers obviously, they came out the traps in the second half, got the goal, and then at that point you kind of think, yeah, they'll probably go on to win. And Motherwell fans will be sitting there thinking, and I know what it's like in these circumstances, you're kind of hoping you're going to get a break from somewhere. I mean, Aberdeen will be the same yesterday. Their fans will be hoping after the first goal went in, we'll maybe get a break somewhere. Never happened. Motherwell were more the game than Aberdeen were, to be fair, but I mean, that wasn't hard. So I feel for Motherwell because they're doing better than I thought they would do. And I think the way the league is just now, we'll see what Aberdeen do in the league over the next wee while. But as we've alluded to, Rangers really are not at the level their fans want them to be at. And it comes back to what we've just said, 5, 15, 20 minutes ago, what it was. Whoever won this game is going to be on a hiding nothing, because the final is such a test of them.
Definitely. I just want to touch on, in terms of the manager, I don't know if this result really changes much, because it was a pretty boring game. You didn't really see Rangers doing much. Do you think it really changes much, Graham?
I mean, I think they'll be happy that they've won the game. But I said this on Friday. I always found it strange that they gave Clement that new contract when I don't think he'd earned it, to be honest. I don't think it will change anything. I think there's a lot of games to come. I don't think they were great today, but they've won the game. And something that Alistair mentioned about stats, I've said this before. I genuinely think managers sometimes use stats to benefit them. I don't think stats matter. All that matters is who wins the game. I go back to Wednesday night against Kilmarnock at Tynecastle. Kilmarnock had 29% possession, won the game 2-1. That's the only stat that matters. You can have all the possession you want. It means nothing if you don't do anything with it. And I said this on Friday as well. You know, stats you can make it look however you want. The main fact is, did you win the game? Doesn't matter about stats. If you don't win the game, it doesn't matter. You can have as much possession as you want. If you do nothing with it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a bit like the expected goals thing. I mean, my slightly cynical view is this is stuff which the media introduced a bit like American football to try and make it more interesting and give them more to talk about. Expected goals are not goals. What matters are the number of goals you score. And we've all seen games where you've been absolutely battered and then you go and sneak a win at the end. And you know what? You go home absolutely ecstatic. And you don't deserve it. But that's what football's about. Otherwise, it's just a computer game and it's boring because you had expected goals of 3, but expected goals of none, and you won 3-0. That's what the computer says, you know. Much more entertaining if you've got expected goals of 5 and we've got -5 and we actually win 2-0 because we've actually had 2 flicky shots that have bounced off the referee or something, you know.
I remember going to, I think it was around 1996, I went to my one and only American football game when the Scottish Claymores were about. My mates and mates went, and I was like, I'll go along as well. I have never been so bored in my life. 3 hours for a game that lasted an hour. It's like, why is this spending 3 hours doing this? I just didn't get it. Not a sport for me, like. Yeah. But I mean, into the second half, Reagan, and you wonder how Rangers would react. Well, they did react well because 4 minutes after the break, they do get the equaliser. Really good play from Connor Barron, gets into the box and pulls it back for the much maligned Cyril Dessers. And Rangers back in the game, and they needed that start the second half.
Yeah, they did, just to make everyone a bit more assured that Rangers were going to get the victory. But like you said, I think Dessers is a I'm interested. The players, everybody reacts, because I think in terms of like Dessers, he needs to do it more often and take those chances that are easy for him to score, because I don't know if you remember, he had a great chance in the second half as well, just before he got taken off, and he missed it again, and I'm thinking, that's a chance that you need to take. So, yeah, I just don't know if... I think he'd be good if he was a second-rate striker, like Man U, under Sir Alex Ferguson used to have like 4 or 5 top strikers. See if he was like on the bench to come on, he'd be a good striker. But I don't think he's your number 9 that really wins you titles or wins you trophies.
Actually, looking at the equaliser, Alistair, I actually thought one of the few Rangers players that I thought really got pass marks today was Czerny. He looked to try and make things happen. The only thing with Czerny that I noticed quite a lot is, and I never understand this for a professional footballer that can't use both feet, he always wants to kick on his left foot.
Yeah, I'll say in his defence that there was quite a famous Rangers player called Davy Cooper who was pretty one-footed, and he wasn't too bad, but I kind of know what you mean. But I'm not sure I entirely agree, because I actually think most footballers obviously have got a dominant foot, and you can see them in your own team. They try and get the ball back onto their preferred foot, or they try and hit it if they're left-footed and they're on the wrong side of the park. They just make a mess of it. So, no, you're right. He was one of Rangers' better players. I think part of the problem, though, is something we've talked about in this show before. I mean, Rangers are operating at a level in terms of people they're bringing in, which I would say is broadly equivalent to the Championship in England. That's where a lot of their players are coming from. You talked about Tom Lawrence and people like that. And that's the kind of results you're going to get. So they're better than the other teams in Scotland. You're bringing in teams from the first and the second division because they've got less money. So yes, of course they should win. But if Maida was in those positions, for example, he'd have scored a lot more of these goals. And that's the difference. He's just a better player. And I'm not, again, I'm sorry, I'm disagreeing with people, which I don't normally do, but I think Regan, if he was brought on as a sub, the Rangers fans would be absolutely raging because he'd just go and miss in the last minute.
Well, Regan, there were 2 substitutions on 67 minutes for Rangers, and off went Dessers, and off also went James Tavernier to be replaced by Sterling and Danilo. And that seemed to get a reaction from the commentators who were really surprised that Tavernier went off.
I think it's just because he's got the armband for Rangers, but I think if you look at Tavernier this season, he's not really done that great. Graham, I said to you a few years ago, I feel like Rangers should have gotten rid of Tavernier after the European final in Spain. You know, I just feel like they went on too long. They probably should have got the peak value for him when he was scoring all those chances. But I just feel like this season, he should have probably went over to, I don't know, Saudi Arabia or maybe over to Turkey where John Lundstrom went to. So I just feel like maybe he's kind of, I wouldn't say fed up. I just think he's probably just bored of all the criticism and stuff like that. And I think that now it's kind of playing a part because I don't really see the same Tavernier that even that I did see last season. Am I right in saying, guys, he's only scored, I guess, 1 or 2 goals this season, Graham?
Well, he's not getting penalties to score, so it makes it more difficult. Hope
That's-
there's no fans watching this.
That's true. But no, I just don't think he's having the same impact on the matches as he's been used to.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Alistair. I mean, we talked about it earlier, and you said that he does get a lot of criticism, and it is true. You know, he is the captain. Of course, the captain gets criticism, but there's no doubt this season that Tavernier's form has dipped, and it seems to have an effect. You've only look at the game at Celtic Park, where Celtic were comfortable winners that day, and Rangers fans are outside the stadium, and the one they're pointing at is Tavernier. Now, that must take... He's got a lot on his shoulders just now, and it must be difficult. So, you know, for the captain to come off today, he's not having his best this season so far, but it must be affecting him.
Yeah, I think, I'll tell you what's interesting that ties in with this. I listened to the Rangers Aberdeen on the radio, or Aberdeen Rangers on the radio, and they had, I don't remember who it was some former Rangers player, and he was talking about the fact that there were not really any Rangers men in the Rangers team. And by that, he meant, you know, proper Rangers, you know, the kind of guys we've talked about earlier on, the kind of guys who are, you know, bleed, you know, blue rather than red. I was going to say another colour there, but I might have got into trouble. But but I think there's an element of truth in that, because you've always had, through almost all their history, you know, people like McCoist and people like that, and then the guys who've come up, you know, the Terry Butchers and all these people, they've actually bought into this. I think it's much harder for these guys coming from a slightly lower level who maybe don't know the history of Rangers, because, you know, whether other fans like it or not, they're one of our 2 big, great clubs. And that actually puts the pressure on them because they're not used to handling it. Because if you're playing at Norwich, with the greatest respect to Norwich, you're not under anything like the pressure you're under in an Old Firm game, or indeed in a semi-final against Motherwell. And I think Regan's right. Tavernier's possibly going past his sell-by date, possibly a bit too late, but this again ties in what we were saying before. It'll be interesting to see what Rangers social media says tonight. Now, I'm not going to go and look at it because I don't, but I suspect there'll be a lot of people still really unhappy, and there'll be a lot of criticism because they'll be looking at this and they'll be saying the same as we are. While they might hate to think it, they're thinking, how are we going to win this final?
No, absolutely. There was a save by Oxford on 71 minutes, and then the winning goal for Rangers does come in 80 minutes. Really good play by the man I just picked out earlier. Czerny picks out Barami, and it's unfortunate for Motherwell, Regan, because it does hit off Bammer. If it doesn't take that deflection, I don't think that goes in, but it's a big, big goal for Rangers.
It's a big goal, and like we spoke about earlier, it probably saves the manager's job. And you'll probably be happy, Graham, because I think your club play Rangers next week, so you'll be hoping that'll be when he finally gets this sack.
Our record at Ibrox is pitiful. It really is.
I don't know. I think Hearts are obviously playing a bit better, despite the fact they got a jammy draw yesterday. And I don't know, because there's an inherent weakness in Rangers' psyche almost, because if you were to find, if Shankland could rediscover his shooting boots and you all of a sudden go 2-0 up or something like that, then I think it becomes really, really hard. Really hard. It's not many teams do what Dundee did today and come back from 2-0 down. I think the percentage chances of it's less than 5%. It's about 2 or 3%. So you have I think teams other than maybe Celtic and Aberdeen are going actually, who expect to win. I think other teams are going to play Rangers, particularly at home. And I know your game's away, thinking actually we've got a chance here.
I certainly hope so. I mean, Rangers did manage to see the game out. Motherwell didn't really create too much after that. I mean, in terms of Motherwell, Reagan, they probably came into this under no real pressure. Now, I know that a lot of folk had them down as favourites, rightly so, but Motherwell put so much into that game. You know, it's physically demanding for them, but they put so much into the game, and they'll be gutted that it's gone that way.
They will be, because they would have seen it as a proper opportunity to get to the final against a Rangers team that I know really doing too well this season, and they'd have probably seen the opportunity where they know that everybody at Rangers is under pressure, and they can go and kind of see if they can win the game. So no, it was just unfortunate that actually it went off the boy's leg. But I mean, fair play to Rangers there in the final now. But the thing for Motherwell as well is they've put a very good start to the season, and am I right in saying, Graham, I think they're only 2 or 3 points behind Rangers as well. So, they've done okay, Motherwell.
Yeah, well, it's not like Reagan to make good points on this show. I'll say that now because he did this to me last week. But yeah, I mean, I'm just getting you back, mate. It's a very good point that he makes there, Alistair. I mean, Motherwell have had a good start to the season, a bit like Aberdeen yesterday. They can't let that derail their season because they have done very well. Today is a massive, massive blow. They put so much into it, but they have had a good season and they've got to build on positives.
Well, hopefully not next week, so they're playing us. So they do, and they are managing to win games. I mean, the game they won at McDermott, they won in the last minute, and a draw would have been a fair result again, which is maybe something we can come back to later on. But yeah, they are doing, as I said earlier on, they're doing better than I thought they would do. I suspect they're doing better than they thought they would do. Particularly losing their talisman striker. That's the kind of thing which can really cripple the club, and it doesn't seem to have had any impact on them whatsoever. In fact, it'd be interesting to imagine if he was still there, how they'd be doing. They might actually have given Rangers a much, much harder game, because in the form he was in last season, Theo Bair was a handful for anybody, and particularly I think that Rangers defence the way they are just now. So Motherwell are going to be fine this year. They're not going to be, I don't think they're going to fall away. I think, you can see some of the other scores today. Hibs, Dundee United, somebody said in the chat earlier on, how did we get a draw? And I think United will possibly fall away in the second half of the season a bit, because first season back up, etc., etc. So Motherwell fine. Other teams like Dundee United are probably going to be coming down and joining ourselves in the fight against relegation.
I know that this is something Stephen's talked about before, but I know it's been mentioned before about Liam Kelly. I think Oxborough is a very good goalkeeper. They do have a very good goalkeeper there. He made a couple of really big saves today. I think Motherwell do have a very good goalkeeper. Yeah,
and it's ironic. I was thinking of this when you were talking earlier on about, Kelly, when you're doing out the teams, and Kelly's on the bench. So you've actually got the situation by which 2 keepers who were in the Scotland squad just in the last 12 months are now on the bench for their respective clubs. So yes, I think they do have a good goalkeeper, and I think Liam Kelly was prone, unless it was just against us, to the odd disaster. So, and speaking as a supporter of a club whose former manager didn't manage to sign a goalkeeper, well, he did. He managed to sign one. Neither of whom were particularly great. It's such an important position. Mm-hmm. And if you look at our season last season at St Johnstone with Beethoff in goal, there is no doubt that he helped keep us up. Absolutely no doubt whatsoever. And they're as important as the strikers, in my view, because strikers never really get absolutely pilloried unless they're Dessers when they miss stuff. Because usually your striker, you expect them to miss one or two. If a goalie lets a clanger in, then it's like, end of the world. And they get absolutely hammered. But, yeah, there's no doubt that Motherwell have actually found a keeper who I think is probably as good as Kelly, based on what I'm saying.
Good evening to Gregor McIntosh, our resident Dundee fan, who is delighted after that. He says, what an ending to the Dundee game. Fantastic. What a win that is. 3-2. Late winner there for Dundee. Fantastic game. I mean, those Dundee come on, it just provide great quality. They can just show that game every week on Sky. That would do me. But I mentioned earlier on, Regan, that Steve Clark was there to watch Lennon Miller. But might he have also been watching Connor Barron? And would Connor Barron do enough to get in that Scotland squad?
See, that's the problem I've got with Barron, right, Graham? I'm sort of thinking to myself, this guy is okay, but is he just okay because, well, it's like Alistair was saying earlier, the fact that Rangers are going down to the Championship for players and the players are not up to the level? Is it because he's doing okay that the Rangers fans and the Scottish football fans are kind of overblown? Because somebody made a good point the other day, and he said that this time last year, this is the same guy that was on the bench for Aberdeen. It wasn't able to nail down a place in Aberdeen, starting 11. So I think he's okay. Do I think he's able to go in and start a match for Scotland? I don't think so.
Alistair, what's your thoughts on Connor Barron? Because he does divide opinion. I think he's a decent player. He's a terror in midfield. You probably look at the fact, though, that Scotland's midfield is probably our strongest area. What's your thoughts on Connor Barron?
Well, just what you've just said. I mean, and I agree with you. You're looking at the strongest area of the team. There is no way he's going to supplant people like McGinn. And look how well McTominay's doing in Italy. I believe Lewis Ferguson's actually come back to belong to your team.
Yesterday, he was on the bench and he was on for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, so let's be realistic. Connor Barron is not getting a move to Italy. He's not getting a move to the Premier in England. He's not a John McGinn. We were talking about Lennon Miller earlier on. I'd almost rather see some of those kind of guys, people like him because I think he's got a wee bit more to him. I'm not saying Connor Barron's a good player. He is a good player. There's no doubt about it. But he's a good player at the level of Scottish football just now. And we've talked on this show, or I have, probably ad nauseam about the level we're at just now. We're not at the level of Henrik Larsson and Brian Laudrup and all that kind of stuff. We're not remotely at that level. So there's no way, in my view, that I would actually have him in the Scotland team just now. You might possibly make a case for him being in the squad. All that will happen then is that the fans of any other club will go, he's only in the squad because he's at Rangers.
Well, Regan, Rangers did win the game today by 2-1. It is a Celtic Rangers final, 15th of December. There's obviously a long way to go, but Celtic fans must be really confident in that final because they just have the edge over Rangers.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to caveat that game is Rangers might have a new manager in, but then they might have a different tactic because my hope fully come on is the manager of Rangers by then, because I never want to see anybody lose their job in Scottish football, Graham. But no, I do think Rangers have a brand new manager then, so that takes on a different stage in the game. But I think if Celtic play like they showed yesterday, like they so often do, then I expect Celtic to win. But you never know. It could be a new manager bounce. It could be anything. But yeah, I think if Celtic play well, Celtic will get the victory.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Alistair. I mean, you just look at Celtic yesterday. We touched on it before earlier on, that the fact that, Celtic just blew everything away yesterday. And it does feel very difficult for anyone to touch Celtic just now. And that Rangers team, and it was actually mentioned during commentary, which is a good point as well, that Rangers team lacks leadership. Now, they've won the game today. It's a big win for them. They managed to get through the final. But if they play like that today, they weren't great. Celtic could swap them aside in that final.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, I probably had a slight leaning towards Aberdeen, having lived there for some time, but I was actually secretly hoping that Celtic got 7, so that it would be more than their score against us. But you could see the way McGregor dictates the game for Celtic. You know, there is nobody remotely like that in the Rangers team. And there's nobody remotely like that in any of the other Scottish teams, to be fair. But every time he was available, he's coming back, getting the ball off the defence and just keeping it. And there's the difference. So it's an old firm game, so you never know. I mean, look at England last year, Man City against Man United, FA Cup final. Nobody would have thought Man United would have won, including most Man United fans, to be fair. And they somehow or other got over the line. You could go into it, you could get a Celtic player sent off in the first 10 minutes. You know, all those kind of things which might have an impact, but it's going to have to be probably 2 Celtic players sent off in the first 10 minutes, I think, for Rangers to have a chance. I'm sorry, Rangers fans, if you're watching. Celtic are just miles ahead of everybody else just now. And you saw that yesterday. There's an Aberdeen team that has been the best team in Scotland, bar Celtic, and they absolutely destroy them.
Yeah, I mean, Reagan, we touched on Tavernier earlier on. Tavernier just cannot deal with Daiser Maeda. And look at the form Maeda's in. He's just bagged a hat-trick yesterday. If you're a Rangers fan, if you're James Tavernier, the last player you want to come up against is Daiser Maeda, who just has the Indian sign over him. He can't deal with him.
Yeah, I'm sure Tavernier's in there apologising to his teammates, saying I had a bad game because I was up all night thinking about the 15th of December, thinking about Daiser Maeda, because every time he plays up against him, I really don't know why Rangers don't double up on him or something, because I've been saying that for years. I think James Tavernier thinks about him when he goes to bed at night. You know what I mean? He must have nightmares. But yeah, I think like Alistair says, I think there's got to be something really wrong if Rangers are to win this final. It's got to be a sending off, maybe a set piece, or maybe a deflection, you know, because all roads are pointing to a Celtic victory.
Well, talking of nightmares, Alistair had one yesterday. See what I did there? Because it finished at Johnston 1, Hearts 2. And I'm only bringing this up because Alistair's on the show, and so am I. So I can talk about it. I don't get to talk about Hearts wins a lot this season, so I can do it now. So Johnston 1, Hearts 2. Hearts 1-0 up through an own goal from Nicky Clark. St Johnstone did equalise in the penalty spot through a Nicky Clark goal, which I will touch on in a minute because I actually spoke to the guys behind the whistles about this earlier on about VAR. But we did get the winner in the second half through Kenny Vargas. Really good play by Benny Maringame. Alistair, what were your thoughts on yesterday?
Do you want to talk about the semi-final again? Well, where do we start? Well, Nicky Clark's with a really good goal at the near post. I mean, that was... couple of interesting things. The keeper being taken off at half-time. Now, that's... The manager's now come out and said he actually had a groin strain or something. He was waving at thin air in that first goal. He was absolutely waving at thin air. I tell you what's interesting, though. I was at St Mirren, obviously met Robbie the other on Wednesday. And if you look at the stats, and I know we're talking about stats don't mean anything, but this is such a sea change. Most St Johnstone games for the last goodness knows how long, we've had far less than 50% of the play. And even when we were really good under Callum, we still had less than 50% of the play. But if we got a goal in front, we had Jason Kerr, and we had a really good defence, and we weren't going to lose a goal. Against St Mirren, we had about 60+% of the play. Doesn't happen. Against Hearts yesterday, we had far more of the play than Hearts. Again, that doesn't happen. What we haven't got is a defence. And you can see that because the Red Sea, Partick, and okay, Sprangler, who's been one of our best players. I mean, I'm going to have a rant about Levine. How can Levine not see that Sprangler's a player? He just refused to play him. And okay, he'd been booked, so otherwise he might have taken me down. And Holt didn't get near him either. And it was, after you, Claude, oh, whoops, we've just lost a goal. So the manager, there's a couple of things about the manager which I quite like. One of which is very, very unusual. He does not criticise VAR or referees. I don't know if you've heard any of his after match comments, but he absolutely does not criticise VAR or referees. Now, you could certainly make a case that the penalty we got was iffy, right? You could also make a case that the foul that St Mirren got when Sidibe scored was iffy as well. But these things, even themselves out. Most managers react to it. He just doesn't. He just says, we've just got to get on and accept it, and that's the way things are. I think that's really good. He says we're playing better. He needs to sort the defence out. You look at our goals against, it's the worst in the league. If we sort that out, and okay, Sidibe and Benji didn't play particularly well yesterday, then I think we've got a reasonable chance of staying up. But we've got to sort the defence out. It's rubbish.
Reagan, I felt going into that game yesterday that was a must-win game for Hearts, given our next 3 league games are Rangers, Celtic and Aberdeen. We have won it. It wasn't pretty, but it's a big, big 3 points for Critchley.
It definitely is. I think it's been a positive start for Neil Critchley, Graham. Edinburgh Derby, the 4-0 win against St Mirren. And obviously you've got to beat during the week against Derek McKinnon side, but I just feel like you're starting to be able to say that hopefully you're starting to go in the right direction again, Graham. Like you said, okay, you're not going to expect 9 points from the next 3 games, are you, Graham? Are you going to expect 9 points for the next 3 games?
No.
But so I think it's about building blocks. Like see if you go in on Sunday and you get a 1-1 draw against Rangers, and you get a 2-1 defeat against Celtic, and you draw with Aberdeen, people are going to say, well, at least it was a close game and we fought to the end and we did well. But if you go out there and you get beat 2 or 3-0 by Rangers and 5-0 by Celtic and 3-0 by Aberdeen, then people can question. But I think it's all about how the next 3 games, about how you show and like be able to show that you're a proper team and show that you're able to fight. Because I don't know about you guys, but I can officially say that third spot has been sewn up already by Aberdeen, because I just feel like them getting that victory on Wednesday night, and obviously I think it's now 23 points ahead of Hearts,
Mm-hmm.
and they're about, I don't know, about 27 ahead of 5th place. So I just don't see anybody else being able to really get anywhere close to them.
There was a VAR incident yesterday. Now, I can understand why it was given, because there is pulling, but again, you see it every week. So Cammy Devlin and Kermit McPherson going for the ball. I think Devlin actually slips. I think there's a pulling from both. What I don't understand is the referee is actually looking straight at it and doesn't give it on the park. It then takes ages to decide, right, this needs to go to a VAR decision. Nobody's claiming for it. I don't see Johnson players claiming for it. So I actually asked the guys at Behind the Whistles podcast about that, and they said that they discussed this morning, and they all said the same thing, that nobody claims for it. It wasn't clear and obvious, but they think probably with the angle that they showed, it was a penalty kick. But this is the thing again, Alistair. I mean, I don't want to talk about VAR again, but it's just nobody claimed for it. For me, it wasn't clear and obvious. If that's not given, I don't think anybody cares, because St Johnstone were lining up for the corner kick. Nobody claimed for it.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I was at St Mirren on Wednesday and there were 7 goals scored, right? Of which 3 were disallowed because of VAR. One of which, even Robbie, the St Mirren fan, messaged me to say that was really soft. Now, and what the first goal we got, there was about 5-minute wait for that, well, 3-minute wait for that to be given. And I know we don't want to talk about VAR, but it absolutely ruins the game. It ruins the game. And that incident, you're right. I mean, nobody claimed for it. I think I've told you before in this game, in the show, about a game Hearts had against us at McDermott a few years back. We got a penalty, the ball's crossed into the Hearts box, play carries on, nobody claims. They bring it back and go penalty for handball. Nobody had a clue. What's clear and obvious about it? I will say that everybody, well, all the Saints fans, I don't know what Hearts thought the referee was terrible yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't good for both sides. And referees can have bad games, I accept that. But we're not going to get rid of VAR, I don't think. But I am absolutely adamant in my view, it sucks all the joy out of the game. And it's being used far too often to re-referee games and not let referees get on and just go, right, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, Reagan, to be fair, I was glad that there was no controversial decisions yesterday or today in the two Premier Sports Cup semi-finals.
I was surprised myself because VAR always like to get involved and change a few things. But yeah, I mean, all they did get involved in was talk about Celtic's fourth yesterday, and that was cleared as onside. So thankfully for the referees and for the fans in the stadiums, there was no VAR to talk about.
Well, our hour is up. Thank you, as always, to Alistair, Blair and Reagan for joining me today. We are back on Tuesday for Celtic's Champions League game, and we're back on Thursday for Rangers in Europe and Hearts in Europe. Come on, the Jambles. Thank you to everyone that's joined us. Thank you for the comments. It will be a Celtic Rangers Premier Sports Cup final on the 15th of December. We'll be back on for that as well. It's a busy, busy show. Hope you have a cracking rest of the night. Thank you all for joining us, and we shall see you again on Tuesday. Take care, folks.